Then. And yeah, I just want to welcome everyone today. So I know that a lot of you have been joining us for our coffee chats. And so, of course, the way we always start off with our coffee chats is, do you have your coffee, tea, drink of choice? There's no judgment here, but yeah, the coffee chat hour is our time where we can learn and connect. I see Jim, there's water, right? Good for you. Um, and so we just want to connect and learn. And so today's coffee chat is part of our new series. So we've broken out the coffee chats into four different ones. So we have a retailer series, we have our grain farmer and friends, and we have tools and farm solutions, and then we actually have our market gardeners. So today, for our very first tools and farm solutions, we are excited to welcome Luong, Luong and John Gingerich from Nurture Growth. Lee is from Nurture Growth, and John from Schlegel Poultry to have a conversation with us. And before we get started, I just want to do our land acknowledgement. And I want to recognize that as we come together from across all of Ontario, we recognize that the farms, lands, and food systems we work with in are part of the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations. And we acknowledge their long-standing relationship with the land and the knowledge that continues to shape how it is cared for today. And we welcome participants to share their own land acknowledgements in the chat. So if you want to go ahead and acknowledge and let us know where you're coming from, you can do that in the chat. And speaking of the chat, just to give you a little bit of how we'll be going forward today, each one of our guests is going to talk a little bit about their knowledge base and their product, and we have a bunch of questions. In the beginning, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And then we'll have a question and answer session as well at the end. But you can have your answers answered in the chat by our experts if you want, or we can save them towards the end as well. And sometimes they'll even add in some of the questions that we're having. And for a little bit of background about who we are, so I'm Erica, and I am the executive director here at Ontario Organic. And Ontario Organic was formerly known as the Organic Council of Ontario, and we are here for you. So we're a grassroots works grassroots network, and what we're doing is we're bringing everyone together, farmers, business, people that eat the food, so that we can have a stronger organic food system grounded in science, and it's this community, so bringing all of us together. So let's go ahead and get into our talk today. And I'm going to start with Lee and talking a little bit about your background. So apparently, this has been, hopefully I don't mess this up here, but that you are an accomplished business leader with experience in strategic planning, marketing, sales, and management, and a track record of success across multiple industries. And you are the CEO of Nurture Growth Biofertilizer, which has received numerous awards, recognizing, well, actually, you've received numerous awards recognizing your leadership, innovation, environmental impact. So I'm really excited to hear about that. Lee also serves on advisory boards for startups and is actively involved in community initiatives supporting refugee resettlement and Vietnamese cultural development, earning national recognition for those contributions as well. So, Lee, I'm going to actually go ahead and let you talk a little bit about nurture growth, and then we'll pop over to John, and then we'll get into our questions. So, if you want to tell us a little bit about nurture growth, a little bit about what you guys are doing there, we'd love to learn some more.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation to share my story and welcome everybody. Before I talk a little bit about nurture growth, I wanted to talk a little bit more about how I got into nurture growth. My family, when we arrived in Canada in 1981, we were sponsored by two churches out by Glencoe, Ontario, by London. So my parents actually farmed and we grew cucumbers when we first arrived in Canada. So when the opportunity uh, arose for me to help bring nurture growth to the Canadian market, I thought, wow, this is a great opportunity because when I was younger, I grew up in farming. Actually, my first vehicle that I drove was a tractor. I would be sent back to the farm every summer, just to learn, the value of, hard work, spend time with my sponsors and the kids, to go to camp, go to vacation Bible school. So, farming has been, deep in my roots from childhood, right? And when this opportunity came for me to bring nurture growth to the market, I thought, wow, I can actually help farmers grow more sustainably. And, what better way to do that than to provide an organic product such as nurture growth? Back then, I didn't understand what a biofertilizer was, what biologicals and how they help farmers to grow more sustainably. But now in my 11th year of running nurture growth, what I've learned is that our our mother nature is brilliant. She has all of these systems already in place. And this is where nurture growth helps to optimize the nutrients that Mother Nature has already made available. So, for example, our product is a biofertilizer, a biostimulant, and a bioinoculant, and it's the first of its kind. And what it's doing is that it's taking atmospheric nitrogen and converting it to a usable source so that we can reduce the use of chemical fertilizers. In addition to that, well, everyone on this call, is an organic grower, but this is in general. But what it does is that it's optimizing the nutrients. So if you're using compost, if you're using manure, if you're using other forms of organic products, what it's doing is that it's unlocking it and making it more readily available. So just because you apply manure or you apply compost, it doesn't mean the plants are able to uptake those nutrients. And this is where nurture growth is helping to expedite those nutrients and making them available. So what it's doing is that we're adding beneficial microbes to the soil, and then it's interacting with the soil microbiome. So at different stages, plant requires different nutrients. So at certain times, especially at the start of the season, they're needing nitrogen. So this is where your plants are exhibiting certain features like yellowing. And that's because there's a soil imbalance. And this is where products like Nurture Growth helps to balance out that soil microbiome. So it's now creating the nutrients that it needs. So it will create the nitrogen if it needs it, right? And at a later stage, if it needs phosphorus or potassium, it will unlock those nutrients to make it available. So we've had a lot of success with organic growers and also conventional growers. They can use them as a standalone product, or they can use them on top of the amendments and the nutrients, that they already have. So these are just some examples of some organic. So this, for example, this is a very high number, but I want a disclaimer that he only did 1 acre, right? So we're assuming that if he did a much larger acreage, he would have, I would say, like a 10%, increase in his corn. And this is an organic grower. This is an organic sweet potato grower, and he increased his yield by 7%, but it was more than enough to pay for the product and have a very healthy product. So Nurture Growth is helping farmers to grow more sustainably, and it's also helping them to improve their bottom line. So I would love to share more, but I want to give over the floor to John so that he can also share about his product as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for that introduction. I have a lot of questions just seeing all of those. And I've seen you, I haven't had a chance to actually look at your product. I know you've come out to our conference, but I haven't spent a lot of time looking at it. And so like it was really great to have that overview. And I'm sure a lot of people have more questions about it. But before we jump into it, we are going to talk to John. So John Gingerich grew up on a farm in the Waterloo region and attended the University of Guelph, obtaining a Bachelor of Science in Natural Resources Management. He continued at Guelph into graduate studies, including completing a Master's of Science in Soil Science, focusing on how the application of various composts impacted soil properties and fertility. And in 1998, he began to work at Cold Springs Farm to build a composting business using turkey litter produced on company farms as the feedstock. Cold spring, cold spring composting. Hold on a sec here. Cold Spring Composting business was acquired in 2003 by J.M. Schneider and in 2008 by Maple Leaf Foods, and since 2013 has been owned by the Ronald Schlegel family, RBJ Schlegel Holdings. And Schlegel Poultry Compost now composts a blend of 75% turkey litter and 25% spent mushroom substrate. I am curious what that is, selling the finished turkey litter compost product primarily to specialty crop producers, including ginseng growers and certified organic farmers. So there's a lot in that
Interesting.
bio there, John. Can you add to that? Oh, John, I think you are muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Erica. Um, yeah, just to touch on some of the things that Erica mentioned here, I did go to the University of Guelph and studied soil science there, and like it said, did my some master's degree research. The compost that I was working with at that time was mostly leaf and yard waste compost. It didn't have a lot of nutrients, but it still had a lot of beneficial effects on the soil. And that kind of got me very interested in composting. And as I was finishing out my master's degree, I worked for a year for a consultant who work with organic farmers. And I had kind of a personal connection, grew up on a farm. It was not an organic farm, but I had a very good friend who I went to high school with, his name was Perry Reibling, and he comes from the Reibling family near Tavistock, who started a business called Oak Manor Farms. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that,
Oh,
but
Banner.
they've been around a long time. They were pioneers in organic back in the 60s. And I enjoyed played a lot of sports with Perry and kind of got to know him personally, but it really kind of got my interest in organics. And like I said, worked for a gentleman for a year, and then that led me to Cold Springs Farm. And they had started, had started making some compost as kind of a nutrient management strategy, I guess you could say. And that led to when I started working for them. I guess you could say I'm a survivor because Cold Springs, there's been a few transitions over the years. Cold Springs was a private company, and then J.M. Schneider ended up buying that business, and then actually it was part of Maple Leaf for a while. But the Schlegel family, it's been over 10 years now working with them, and they're wonderful people, a very diverse businesses that they're involved in, and the the we are a significant turkey grower. So one of the great things about that is there's really nothing richer as a substrate to compost than turkey litter. So you've got a nice source of bedding, which is a carbon source for composting. The birds manure into that, and that mixture is what we make compost out of. And then Erica mentioned the spent mushroom substrate. What that is, it's what's left over after you've grown organic mushrooms. So there's a cycle to growing those mushrooms, and we get that spent material. And on its own, that material has some limitations. It doesn't have a whole lot of nutrient content necessarily, but it does have a lot of good carbon in it. And it also, one of the challenges we had when we were trying to compost our pure turkey litter is it was so rich, almost a little too dense to get enough oxygen into it. So when you're composting aerobically, it's very important that you have enough oxygen for the bacteria to do their work, right? And so you need enough moisture for those organisms to thrive, but they also need to get oxygen, or basically they will suffocate, and the process won't work right. You won't get proper heating. So we found that by adding about a quarter spent mushroom substrate, we're adding some other good, there's other good beneficial microbial life coming into the picture, but there's also, you're adding another source of carbon because the mushroom growers tend to use straw. For our bedding, we use more wood chips. So then you've got a nice mix, and that fibrous material, the spent mushroom substrate, basically fluffs up our windrows. So we're using a windrow composting system, and it really helps to bulk up that windrow and get good oxygen flow and much better heating, which is pretty essential to making good compost. So that was a change that we made since the Schlegels are involved. We started that in about 2014. We've just found that since then we feel like our process is working better than ever, and yeah, we're happy with how that works for us. So one of I guess big picture, many of you might be familiar with, you may live in areas where you have green bin programs. I don't know if anybody wants to stick their hand up if they have one of those. So as a citizen, I think these things are fantastic, right? We should not be putting organic waste in a landfill. It results in greenhouse gases and all kinds of nasty things going on that we don't want. So I am very much in favor of these programs. When I put my Schlegel hat on, one of the challenges I have is, unfortunately, those programs are in most cases taxpayer funded, either directly or you've got uh, private companies doing it, on behalf of with again taxpayer funding coming into it, which is totally appropriate to support those kind of things. But the challenge there is that in some cases people are lazy; they throw things into the product that we don't want in the finished compost, and so what um, the challenge of those programs is there's more coming tomorrow, so the product has to go away. So in some cases, the product quality can be, there's a lot of contamination. So with what we're doing, it's very different in that we have complete control over the bedding and all the material that's in the compost, and we can make a very high quality product. And we've also got very high nutrient levels compared to leaves and twigs and stuff like that. So basically, we can make a high quality product without contaminants that has a lot of beneficial plant nutrients. And so that's really kind of what we've focused on is trying to find customers. All compost looks black, right? If it has glass and plastics in, that can be kind of obvious, but it our product we tend to sell to professional user customers, organic farmers, ginseng growers who basically understand what makes our product different. That we have, a lot of nutrient content in it, and that has served us very well in terms of being able to feed plants effectively. At the end of the day, to grow plants, whether it's organic or conventional, of course, in an organic system, we're much more worried about the holistic nature of the soil, feeding the soil. And that's a great thing about compost, right? Compost feeds the soil. You're putting in a lot of organic matter and you're combining it with nutrients. And you also have a lot of beneficial microbial life in that compost as well.
Yeah,
Um,
I think
yeah.
I was actually wondering, John, you were talking about the people that you sell to.
Mhm.
Can people, because you're like in Waterloo region, like do you have a store where people could come in and get a small bag of that compost, or is it
Right.
really large amounts that are going out?
Okay, so to this point, so just to clarify, the actual business is near Putnam, so it's Oxford County, Zora
Okay.
Township. So we're just off the 401, and the focus of our business so far has been more large, like farm users and professional
Mhm.
users. We do have a lot of people who come in locally who know the product, but I haven't really focused on that aspect as much. We've more focused on the bulk sales to farmers. And then
Oh,
in the last year or so, we've put in a dehydration system because I do have some large customers who do retail products who are using my dried compost as an approved organic nutrient source in their planting media.
oh, okay. Okay,
Okay.
that's
So
neat.
that's something that we're actively kind of trying to grow now that we have that dehydration
Have that
system.
everything. How about you,
Mhm.
Lee? Do you guys sell only for larger farm users, or can people also just buy your product for their smaller gardens?
Both actually. So we sell to the horticulture industry, so like ginseng, apples, berries, fruits and vegetables, garlic, you name it. And then we also sell to the home growers as well, which you can purchase through Home Depot online, Rona online, Canadian Tire online, and also Amazon as well. What I recommend is that if anyone is interested in purchasing a small amount, who's like a smaller grower, is to reach out to us. Because the price that we are selling uh, at the retailers is more for a home grower. So what we tend to do is that we just add more product to kind of compensate for the pricing, right? So the at like a home grower pricing, it would be like 35.99 for like a bottle, right? Whereas it's significantly cheaper because you don't have all that packaging and marketing and
And everything you have to
etc.
do. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing the background. And now like kind of diving into the, what the what we're hearing from farmers right now, right? Like what what you obviously you're going to hear the slant because you guys are both working on things that are added to the soil. So what do you hear from the farmers when what are they trying to solve? What is the actual, are they trying for larger outputs? Are they trying to have, soil that's staying around longer? Maybe there's even more to it. What do you hear from farmers in terms of what they want? And Lee, I will start with you there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I would say that in the last 11 years, the focus has really shifted to healthy soils and having organic matter in the soil and farmers more open to using biologicals compared like I remember like before COVID, we had to change strategies and educate and share knowledge with our growers. And that's why we have our regular webinars so that we share with our growers, what are these different microbes and how are they helping to improve the nutrient cycle. So definitely there's a much healthier, sorry, a much more emphasis on soil health and improving the organic matter in the soil. And then more farmers are talking about microbes in the soil. And it also depends on if you're talking to an organic grower or a conventional grower, but definitely the conventional growers are definitely talking more about healthier soils. And then with organic growers, they've always, like that is their land, right? And they know
Mhm.
that they need to respect that land and to, you know, when whatever it is that you're removing, that you're adding those nutrients back in, whether it's compost. And John, I've used products very similar to yours, and I love it. Like when it's in use in combination with nurture growth, like my mother's um basil, no
Mhm.
word of a lie, is like maybe three-quarter the size of my hand, right? When you use a product, right?
Yeah.
So I like when I'm in Putnam, I definitely need to buy a couple of bags because I know that it just works so well when it's used with, with our product. So yeah, definitely bigger emphasis on soil health. But now even with the organic growers, they're talking about like the microbes and what type of microbes and
Mhm.
what type of organic. So it's more science based what that I'm hearing, I'm seeing from our growers.
Okay. And
Yeah.
I really like hearing about, synergistic. Like everybody's like, what's the magic product? And you're like, sometimes it's a that combination of magic pro and they're not magic, but products that are great on their own, but when you bring them back together, the it's the effect is magnified
Yeah.
significantly where you're able to bring them together and those synergistic
Mhm.
effects. And Lee, kind of like thinking about people talking about what's in their soil, and when we talk about microbials, and well, biologicals, and then their ability to replicate and remain in the soil year after year, is that something that the you're hearing as well? Is they want something that doesn't have to be, that has some sustaining value year over year as well, or is that not a concern? They just assume they're going to just keep adding stuff every single year.
Well, it's like these microbes need food, right? So they also have a life cycle, and that's why you need to replenish. So it's not like you would add it once and then they survive forever and then they just multiply, right? So they need food sources. And with a product like Nurture, with the reason why it depends on what crop is that we're recommending anywhere between 1 week to 4 week replication, is because the microbial population starts to decrease, right? And that's where we're adding it to help to increase, because
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
microbes are doing different things at different times, right? And that's why the application. And I know with for example, with the a manure, I think it's like once per season, right? At the beginning of the season, and it's more like a
Often.
slow release. And this is where products like Nurture Growth, as you're applying, it will start extracting it when it needs. So it doesn't give it all to the plants at one time. It only gives it as it's needing it.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. And John, I think that's a great segue into talking about what you're hearing about from farmers and the
Yes.
problems they're trying to actively solve. And then I guess we need to know a little bit more about the frequency too of when you're using your product.
Yeah. So I thought Lee said some really great things there. I could just say, well, what she said, as far as the farmers, I think becoming more aware of soil health. I think that's definitely true. And I'm with Schlegel Poultry Compost. We're members of what's called the Composting Council. There's one in Canada, the Canadian Composting Council. And I'll just very quickly kind of touch on obviously compost is very, beneficial to soil health. And there's kind of six C's, that they've come up with that relate to soil health, which I very quickly want to touch on because I think that they're principles. I think in organic, we tend to be much more holistic, right? As opposed to, again, I grew up in a more conventional farm. Okay, we put on X pounds of nitrogen to grow X bushels of corn. And, it's very kind of in and out, and maybe neglecting some of the complexity, right, that we understand more about soil now. So these six C's, like I would guess, I think compost can be part of the picture. And like Lee said as well, like I don't want to be too exclusive of that. I don't think, it's not just about putting compost on, right? We have to think about the bigger picture. So for example, these six C's, controlling compaction is one of them, right? We don't want to be compacting our soil because when the soil is compacted, it makes it difficult to get oxygen into it. So I often encourage as many of my customers as possible, can you apply compost during the late summer? Because that's a time of year when the soil is drier. And when you're going over it with heavier equipment, you're not going to damage it as much. Right. So applying at certain times of the year can be helpful. Cultivating carefully is the next one. Don't over cultivate. Right. Do what's necessary. As much as possible, keep continuous living plants on the soil. That's another of the six C's, right? A very important concept. Um, and number four is kind of related to it. Cover the soil constantly. Again, that keeping, plant material, that not leaving it bare and prone to erosion. Number five is crop and animal diversity, trying to rotate your crops, right? Getting different root systems, different, there can be different even microbial associated with different plants, all that kind of stuff. And then the 6C is, compost and other soil improvers, right? What can you add as part of that picture? And yeah, as far as the, sustaining value, I know when I did my master's research, it was interesting. I had, again, the compost I was using was not, it wasn't the stuff I make now. I don't think it was particularly high quality, but you could still see the benefits. And in these plots, we had where we did, it was over 3 years. It's a long time to do a master's degree. So we had plots that had 3 years of compost, 2 years, and 1 year. And it was actually interesting because when we were doing that analysis, you could see the residual effect, right, of that compost even from 3 years ago. And so I do think some of my customers buy compost every year. I do have some who may get it every second year. They may, many farmers do soil testing, right? Or they should. I encourage them to. And often the testing for testing's encouraged like every 3 years, as a rough guideline, right? So that's a way that when you've done that, then you get a better picture of the fertility profile of your soil, right? And yeah, it does depend kind of, on what you're growing. As far as application rates with the compost, I would say many of my customers would put it on at one point during the year. If you're a market gardener doing something really high value, they might put on like sort of top dress, as they go, and do it during the growing season somewhat. But a lot of my field crop customers, they would have a certain window to put it on, right? And then the crop gets planted. And then they can't put it on again until that crop's harvested. So hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, that is actually interesting, and the longevity too of compost, that some don't need it every year, and soil testing is becoming, thankfully, accessible, and not ridiculously expensive, that people can use that to really inform their choices in terms of what
Hmm.
soil amendments and et cetera that they need. Do you feel like that your product, John, is fulfilling I know you were talking about like the compost you get that has like, debris in it that's not necessarily great for
Hmm.
for the land and so forth. But do you feel like your compost is addressing like a gap
Yeah.
that other things are missing?
Well, I'll speak specifically if you look at our website, which is nothing incredibly fancy, but we try and focus on what I think is a key element. So in organic systems, with your nitrogen, we're growing legumes, we're rotating crops. There are some other products around as well, like Lee was talking about, that can stimulate microbial activity in the soil and help, release more nutrients from the soil. And those things are all important. Um, I guess one of the things that where I think our product fits a role is that one of the bigger challenges for farmers in organic systems tends to be phosphorus. So there was a study that was done, I think it was like, this is a long time ago now. I believe it was in the mid 90s, and there was a bunch of farmers involved with the Unter Bio Co-op, dairy farmers who were part of this study. And they basically looked at nutrient levels on all their farms. And what they found, that soil phosphorus being fairly low was one of the main challenges. Because when you look at what's available, you can use sulfate of potash, right, which is approved as an organic amendment, right? There's even other sources of potash that can be used. Again, with nitrogen, your there's products, just trying to encourage your overall soil health, having lots of organic matter that can release nitrogen, or using products like Lee's product. Like, I know another one some of my customers would use is Good and Green. So I'll just touch on that. Like, yeah, I don't think necessarily compost is the solution to every problem, right? Sometimes, again, using products, more than one product. Like, for example, I have customers who use my product when they plant their wheat, before they plant their wheat in the fall. And then they may use, I know some of them would use some of the Good and Green product, for example, in the spring for a bit of a nitrogen kick, right? So there's these products can work together, yeah, kind of supporting each other. And I guess, but with our compost specifically, we're very rich in phosphorus. So in that sense, where many farmers struggle with getting phosphorus, I think our product is one of the best values around in terms of phosphorus. You're also getting nitrogen, you're also getting potash, and you're getting a whole skew of other micronutrients. So one of the ways that I tend to promote the product, and you'll see this if you look on our website, is I've taken A&L Labs, who is well involved with the Composting Council. That's where I do all my testing. They have created a product called the Compost Value Calculator. And so what I tend to do is I analyze the compost every year. I'll do like 5 or 6 samples. I'll take an average, and then I'll plug that into the calculator, and I'll also plug in conventional fertilizer pricing, which I can get from, Agrimart or Sylvite or whoever. And basically what this calculator does, it looks at, okay, here's the price of chemical fertilizer. Here's what's in a ton of compost, and it calculates the total dollar value of those nutrients. Now, that can be a bit of a limiting, well, that's kind of maybe a chemical fertilizer way of looking at it, and I recognize that, but it is something that many farmers do understand, and it's at least a good baseline to kind of illustrate the value that's in the product. So yeah, basically, there's a lot of phosphorus in the compost that I think fills a niche, and a lot of other nutrients as well.
All right. Yeah. Well, that's actually some really good information. And yeah, there's the seed list is actually a great list as well. So thanks for sharing that.
Mhm.
Lee, I'm like thinking about your project product. It may not actually be obvious to everyone how it's applied.
Mhm.
And then the same question, because I was just thinking about John and talking about
Mhm.
being in the soil versus an over a top dressing. And then I know your product's a little bit different there, but or maybe not. But thinking about that, and then yeah, I was just wondering, is there how is it applied? Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
I'll get there.
Yeah, so our product is a liquid biofertilizer, and it's comes in a super concentrated formula. So you're looking at an application rate of 4 liters per acre, at the dilution rate of 1%. So these microbes are in a dormant format, and then when it's applied, sorry, when it's mixed with water and then applied to the soil or to the plant, this is where it actually activates. So depending on where you are and how much water you have, because our customers in California are using it through a drip irrigation system. Um, our customers here in Ontario are using it more as a foliar feed. And as you know, with a foliar feed, it actually helps to um, uptake those nutrients faster, right? And there's also, other benefits of using our product if it's applied as a foliar spray. So it really depends on the crop, also the time of year. We're learning, all the time about our product as well and how our customers are using it. So one of the vineyards that used our product for the last few years said, our vines, they were not looking very well. So we did a root injection, directly, in the base. And then, it perked, right back up, right? And these are things that we don't know about until our customers are telling us, okay, it actually works in different application, and
Right.
and it also helps with this and this ailment as well. So we're always learning, and there's no right or wrong way of doing it. It's really a matter of what is the end effect that you want to achieve, right? So for example, if you're using it in combination with John's product, right? How can that work? Is that his is like a soil dressing, whereas ours is a top dressing. The microbes work its way through the stomata, and then the roots. It's exuding hormones, metabolites, and enzymes that is now breaking down the compost, or the manure, right? So that's how our product works, is whether it's a foliar spray, it gets just as much love as it's in a soil application.
Yeah. Okay. And so I think that kind of gets to answering that next question then, which is really what gaps, does your product fill then in the industry?
Yeah. So the couple of different gaps is that, especially with the price of fertilizer, number one, and also, the lack of supply out there. Farmers are, turning towards biologicals because they want to improve their soil health, but also because fertilizers are so expensive, and they want to improve their soil health. So they're actually combining, there's no one size fits all, and everybody has their own growing philosophy of how they do it. So whether they use it as a standalone or whether they use it in combination with, we find that our product, when used in combination with other products, it actually works really well because we've got these extracellular enzymes that help to unlock and expedite those nutrients to make it faster for
Right.
them. So
Right.
what kind of gaps is
Catalyst.
one?
Yeah.
Reducing the fertilizer use, also fertilizer price, and then also, a lot of farmers, organic farmers, are talking about microbes, like improving the organic matter in the soil. And what better way to do that than, use a product, like ours that have these different microbes that are helping to improve the nutrient uptake of, for the plants.
Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting, right? I'm thinking of that as like a catalyst, right? Like that's
Mhm.
really what that's doing. Now, when you're looking at these beneficial microorganisms in the soil, and they're obviously improving that conversion, do they affect any other negative microorganisms in the soil that could cause issues? Is there anything in your mix that actually deals with any sort of like pathogenic microorganisms that are found in the soil?
Yeah, so we don't list any of these claims because we don't have enough science to, prove it. But what we're seeing from our customers that they're providing us the feedback, and we're still trying to understand more. So, for example, we've got subtilis, we've got pamillus, we've got trichoderma. These are all microbes that are used in biocontrol products, right? That is also in our formula. So it is having maybe, some, anti-pathogen, benefits to it, but it's not anything that we have enough materials to say, hey, it helps to improve
It
this
is
because
actually doing it. Yeah.
we are a biofertilizer first to help to improve the nutrient uptake. But just like humans, when we're healthy, we are able to withstand, certain colds, certain viruses, right? Like I remember when I was my partner was sick with COVID, and we're living in a condo, and I was healthy, but I was staying away and I was like washing my hands and I didn't get COVID, but he had it. So plants are very similar in the sense is that when you build up the immunity, when you build up the plant health, when you have strong roots, and when the cells are stronger, the leaves are stronger, it's able to withstand um, different environmental, like the bugs are going to attack the weakest plants.
Yeah, yeah. So, and that's a really good point, right? Sometimes products make claims because they assume that one thing is happening, but actually, it's something else. And in this case, it could just be a healthier plant. And I myself, I work in biological control, so and Subtilis like has a lot of and Trichoderma have a lot of properties where they can take care of some of those damaging things. But it's, at what concentration, and if that's even there, and it is hard to make those statements. So now, you know what, we have time probably for one short question before we head into our Q&A here. And this has just been a great learning experience about your products. Okay, what is the biggest issue to getting people to use your product? Like, why are they, is it price? They think there's something better. You know, what is that biggest issue? I'm going to start with you, John, for that one. What is the roadblock of people saying, I don't want to use your product because of this?
I think, um, like many things, I think price is always something that, gets people's attention for sure. So as I was sharing before, a lot of the green bin programs, for example, are cranking out compost that in some cases may be pretty good quality. In other cases, there can be some challenges with it, but it tends to be fairly low value. And so when I put my Schlegel hat on, sometimes I get a bit frustrated with these programs because they're kind of schlepping, getting product out the door, kind of subsidizing it. So it sort of creates a perception that compost has no value, right? So yeah, that does. I think for people who've used the product and seen the benefits of it, it's an easy. Like a lot of my customers are, yeah, people who get it every year or every second year, and we've had a lot of good, I guess, continued support, right? Like we've been selling, for example, the ginseng industry for over 20 years now, ever since I've been here. And to touch a bit on the previous topic, I know that same thing, like I don't have the research in hand myself, but I know that with my ginseng customers, I tend to sell through farm supply outlets. So there's one of my largest customers is Scotland Agrimart. It's one of the Agrimart franchises south of Brantford who service the ginseng area. And I know that some of their large growers have seen the reason they like to use compost is because they do see suppression of root disease in the ginseng from using it. right? So yeah, there is those benefits. Again, I don't have that data myself, but a lot of them have done kind of their own research and seen those type of benefits. So that, of course, that's, with, yeah, you can add your nutrients, but all these other aspects as well can have sort of additive, beneficial aspects of using the product, even if we don't have all the data to support everything. Um, so yeah, I think um, one of to overcome kind of the price objections, that's why I've really started focusing on the nutrient content. Because, for example, if I use that A&L calculator and I look at the amount of nutrients in the compost, like roughly right now, my bulk compost is just over $100 a ton plus freight, plus application. So I'm able to show people that, in a ton of compost, if I just look at the nitrogen, the phosphorus, the potash, and the four micros that I'm focused on are the zinc, manganese, copper, and boron, there's basically 165 to 170 bucks of total value there, right? So you are getting your money's worth. However, it's important to understand that with compost, some of these nutrients are slower release. They're not all released during the year. And that's I'm giving Lee ammunition now for right of
Yeah.
maybe some of that can be improved, right?
Yep.
But with the use of other products. But I know, again, when I was talking about my master's research, those 3 years versus 2 years versus 1 year plots, right? There's like, there's sort of well, my mathematical lingo is leaving me this morning, like that asymptotic, the release of nutrients, it sort of tails off, right? And so, but you are still seeing benefits from product that was applied several years ago. So if by using the product every once in a while, you kind of smooth out that curve, right? You've got a little bit being released from the stuff that went on 3 years ago, and you've got a little more from, so you can have a nice even release to your crop.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that is really good. And I'm just going to say I had a conversation with a company that's actually using the green bins to make a compost tea. And we had a big discussion about microplastics and how many microplastics are in those green bin programs. It is really significant. And
Mm,
I think that's
yeah,
something that is not discussed about how long that and how that accumulates in the soil. It doesn't break down and
yeah.
it's an issue.
It's
So
a big topic of conversation within the composting council right now.
yeah.
I'm on a committee that's looking at the compost standards, and it's something that's going to be another thing is PFAS. Not to get too off topic here, but if some of you are familiar with polyfluorinated alkyl, I'm brain
Yep.
cramping here, but that's
Yep.
becoming an issue, right?
As
And
well.
with yeah, because it's just it's in lipstick, it's in everything, like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like
It's a problem. It's a
yeah.
problem. All right. Lee, I'm gonna ask you the same question.
Sure.
While you're answering that question, people will notice a poll is gonna pop up about a feedback on the webinar. And if you can take some time, we can only get better if we learn from you. So take some time to fill that out while Lee talks to us about sort of the pushback that she gets with her product, and yeah, we'd like to learn a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I think the number one reason why customers or farmers are reluctant to use our product is if you heard of the term snake oil, there's so many products out there and some of them work and some of them don't. And the ones that don't
Mm,
work give the ones that work a really bad name. But being around for 11 years and having, lots of really positive results and a very good reputation in the market, we're able to withstand that, right? So a lot of companies, they come in, they, laid on really thick. They make their money and they're out. We're still chugging along 11 years later. And to help counterbalance that is that we host webinars every single month and we have a monthly newsletter that we share, with our growers, right? So we pick different topics every month. So our blog that is happening this month talks about, do biologicals really work? What is the ROI, for biofertilizers? And I know that later this summer, we're going to be talking about heat stress. And then later in the fall, we're going to talk about how to replenish your soil, right? By using microbes. So I think that education really helps grower make a more informed decision. And we're not here to sell fertilizer. We're here to help growers to understand what it is that they need. And if our product is a good fit, great. We'll be happy to provide it for you. But we're not here to push product. We're here to help growers and share our knowledge.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective, and I think when anybody who has come into this field, it's not a quick get rich quick. I'm gonna guess the majority of people selling, ag products are not very wealthy people, but they really love farmers. They really love healthy farming. They love good food, and I don't know how we can possibly get that across to people that most people are here because it's passion and they believe in healthy soil, healthy food, and easier things for farmers as well. So I've asked for people to drop their questions in the chat, and I didn't see any come up there. So I'll look for some hand raises here. Does anybody have a question before we wrap up for today? All right, I'm not seeing any
I see
here.
Carolyn has her
Oh,
hand up.
Yes.
Carolyn. All right, go ahead.
Yes, this is for both of you. Um, I'm not too sure, Lee, about what is in your liquid. And I understand where John comes from because I was raised on a farm and it was a Blenheim boundary. I think it's called Oxford Waterloo. We went to New Hamburg Church as a kid. Um, so I know what goes into that. And I also know about the additional stuff because my dad always did that, for the corn and that. But what I don't understand, Lee, is what is really in it and that it's a liquid. And that if you get it, you have to be able to measure it all at once and then spread it on the fields, get it on there ASAP. And I don't understand what's in there. And then the other one that I wanted to know about quickly is people have people get stuff from you, Lee, that actually they spray on their soil in order to get rid of those little buggers in there that are nasty and should be shot. And they spray it on there and they kill them. I don't even know what the hell the little farts are. And then the last one is, and I'm living in an apartment, and if I ever get a garden, the first thing I'm going to plant is comfrey. It makes such a good fertilizer. That'd be the first thing that I would plant and make a tea out of. I mean, I would wear a gas mask and make it. And because it is such a good fertilizer.
Yeah.
That's knowledge from the farm when I was a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. And you know what? My mother to this day still uses coffee as well. She gets it from the restaurant. She's
Oh,
70.
I'm not talking about coffee. I'm talking about comfrey.
Oh, coffee. I'm sorry, I didn't know I don't know what
No,
comfrey is.
comfrey is basically they call it a weed, but man, it's so important.
Oh,
You
okay.
should check it out.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Um,
I don't know what it is, but I will definitely
it's
look into that.
Comfrey,
Okay.
and it's got deep roots, and it comes back, and it just loves you because it keeps coming back.
Mm. Good to know. Good to know. So our product is like a high science product. So we're using food waste as a base to feed the microbes, and we're adding microbes at different stages and putting them all through a fermentation process, right? So how it's very different than a compost tea is that with a compost tea, it really depends on what type of inputs that you have is the type of output that you're going to have. With our product, it doesn't matter what type of input that you have because we're using fruit waste from a fruit distributor and we only need a very small quantity. And these
Yeah,
microbes are um, in a dormant stage. And when it's applied to the soil and mixed with water, that is when it activates and interacts with the soil microbiome. So just to give you example of some of the microbes that we have, and I shared this with you earlier. So we've got Exactobacter, we've got Subtilis, we've got Pamillus, we've got Trichoderma. Just an example of some of the microbes. We have 20 plus different microbes. Half of them I can't even pronounce or spell. But those are the common ones that, farmers know that work, right? And that they use and are seen in other products as well. So that's how our product is different than, what is available on the market, how it's different than a compost tea, and how it essentially works is, with the soil microbiome.
Yeah.
Is that what heals those little goofballs that are in the soil that are basically there and come up and they devour the plants in the garden?
I can't comment on that because we're not like a pesticide, but based on some of the initial feedback that I got from some of my customers is that it helps with in the grass, it helps with grubs, and then in some cases people have sworn by this is that it helps with mosquitoes. I don't know how, but they swear by that. But we need to understand more and have more people provide us feedback so we don't make any of those claims at
Okay.
all.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And I am gonna just in a bit of like understanding why a lot of these companies don't make the claims that they may actually do those things is that in Canada, if you want to have a pesticide, which even if it's a natural pesticide, the process is very different for approvals and for certification. And so sometimes a lot of these companies just choose to go the fertilizer route as opposed to a fungicide or pesticide, even though it may have those properties, it's actually just easier to go that way, and people see healthier plants, and so that that's not worth investing in that research, even though it may be the case with a lot of these products that are out there, and so just to add a little bit of clarification there. All right, so now just to wrap up for today, we're just 2 minutes over time. I just want to share some of our upcoming things that are happening at Ontario Organic. And so we have more of these virtual meetups coming up. So next week, we're back with our grain farmers and friends with corn and soybean planting. And then our market garden diaries are part of the coffee hours. And then we have our organic shelf series is happening on the 26th. And we'll be
Cool.
back with this group here on June 8th for another tools and farm solutions.
Mhm.
All right. And we also have a couple of other webinars. So we had planned on doing Meet Ask Otherwise, our national Canadian data, organic data portal. We were going to do that last week and we have rescheduled it because one of our speakers was not able to make it. So we're hoping you can join us on May 12th as we walk you through the making of Ask Agriwise and how to use it and the future as well. And near and dear to my heart as beekeeper, I've got my overalls on today because as soon as this talk's over, I'm actually going out to the beehives. And it is World Bee Day on May 20th. So we'll be doing a pollinator celebration. And we have a number of speakers joining us. Cole Blair from the Native Pollinator Initiative, Wild Preservation Canada, Crystal and Liam from Wildlife Gardening, and Victor from Pollinator Partnership Canada. So we hope you can join us for that and make sure you get your pre-registration in for that. And again, as I say at the end of every single one of these, we would not be here today without you. And so we are hopeful that you are already a member of Ontario Organic, and there is a membership level for every single person, whether you're a producer, a business, a person who's eating food, uh, if an allied association, and we have been having a number of people join as impact partners, where a percentage of their sale actually goes right into the work that we're doing here at Ontario Organic. So become a member today, and that you can find at our website, organiccouncil.ca, or be dropped here in the chat as well. And finally, I think,
That's it.
uh,
That's it.
oh, that's it.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was like, and finally, that's it. I want to thank our speakers today, Lee and John. It was fantastic to have you here, and we look forward to meeting other tools and input providers over the next several months. But congratulations on being the first, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. A big thank you from Ontario Organic, and we can't wait to see you at our next talk. So have a great day.
Thank you
Thank
for the
you.
invitation.
Yes, thank you very much, Shelley. Appreciate it.
Yes. All right.
Eric.
Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Bye for now.
Bye.